So, $157 million domestically alone. Here to you, fellas. As I'm glad you just took the pressure about what I'm going to be talking about today, especially since the few people I know who did actually buy a ticket were doing it just to see this preview and then they dipped after that. Kind of like what happened back in the 90s when Star Wars was coming out. Anyway, with that in mind, let's talk about the special preview for this summer's reboot of Superman and coming to theaters everywhere on July 11th. And even with some of the discourse, once again, I still maintain, especially as my new shirt proclaims, it is still my most anticipated movie of the summer, if not the entire year thus far. So, let's begin. The preview expands upon footage we saw earlier in the year and also is consistent with some of the details I heard from leaks at CinemaCon as well. We expand upon Clark crash landing in the Arctic, presumably after some fights. Looks like he's worse for wear, spitting up blood, but then he whistles for Crypto to take him home. Which, again, that alone is an aspect that is selling me on this where her the willingness to embrace some of the more out there aspect source material. I mean, there are things you can analyze and things you cannot, and definitely he that's definitely a pick I enjoy. Where he, after pouncing on him a bit, apparently James based the characterization on some of his actual dogs, so there's that. And also, really like how they're pushing towards a solitude in this version as well. I mean, of course, we have the giant crystalline structures from the ones in the 70s and the 80s. He's, but also some more modern technology like the Kryptonian and code keys you see. And stuff like the anime versions, like I watched back in the 90s and the 2000s, and even the DCEU managed to find a work with the man, and several like the Kryptonian and robots to help attend to him, and even with the some people giving responses to like the healing chamber. I actually like the approach to the Yellow Sun powers. Powers like a giant sun catcher in there, even rotating to get the best angle, and with yet more and more expanded footage of not just as David had as Ava Cornshaw as no, Corn Sweet as Clark, but also Nathan Fillion as the Guy Gardner Green Lantern, and a little bit more Mr. Terrific, and a small but significant amount of more coverage with Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, who, again, actually really liking to see what can bring to the table as like a modern age depiction, and where it's not a stretch as this day and age anymore as an antagonist, like someone who has money but wants power and sees others as standing in his way of that power, especially Superman, and which typically how I prefer Lex main. Next, like more pragmatic feel and vigor, especially after the versions that were written after like the post Crisis storylines, like the original version of Crisis and the Earth from the 80s. I mean, and another thing, two major things this footage is telling me, hey, are this. It is very much evocative of the classic like films from years past, especially the first couple, albeit in a modern context. And it's easy to tell that James Gunn's creative fingerprints are on this as well. I mean, where one thing I have with the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy is still tells you a storyline while also not being afraid to embrace some more absurd aspects of source material. Oh, they're dropping heavy hints that Lex is gonna have his kryptonite powered war suit, who from the comics and other adaptations. and of course, Philion's also signed on for the upcoming Lanterns HBO event series as well. Oh, and also, I think it's definitely a simple but effective message of there still being a place for optimism in an incredibly a cynical or at the very least skeptical world. I mean, because he definitely stands out among on the DC canon and this point in pop culture history. I mean, like the question is obviously what is a character like Superman, and in this day and age, solution to answer that question is get in the film quite clearly. As previously stated, there are two other movies I want to talk about before this movie comes out. One is obviously the Richard Donner cut of the second film, which is the only live action installment on feature length that I've yet to give a formal review to, and the other being James Gunn's Super, or one of the many small scale cult classics he managed to make before he got millions upon millions of dollars for his other bigger projects. So I mean, there's a whole subgenre of ones like that, but these are going to be the two most relevant to this movie. And with that, that'll be all for now, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care, everyone.